We spend decades dissecting Hitler's tactics, the Blitzkrieg, the Panzer thrusts, the U-boat wolf packs. But the greatest, most catastrophic lie of the 20th century wasn't the one Hitler told the world. It was the one he truly believed. It was a lie so vast, so seductive, that it rewired morality, re-engineered nations, and ultimately reaped a global harvest of 75 million graves. This wasn't politics. This was a religious fervor built on resentment and delusion. To understand the Holocaust, to understand World War II, you must first understand the architecture of this lie. Hitler did not worship the Christian God. His deity was nature, a brutal Darwinian force whose sole commandment was the survival of the fittest. From this dark pantheistic creed, he forged a political doctrine that erased mercy and celebrated annihilation. Racial Darwinism. For Hitler, human history was not a story of nations or economics, but one of pure, biological racial warfare. He believed the Aryan, a mythical Nordic super-race, was the sole creative force in history, destined to rule the planet. Conversely, he defined Jews, Slavs, Roma, the disabled, and political dissenters as biological pollutants, slowing the master race's ascent. In his mind, mercy was sin, annihilation was virtue, because as he infamously wrote in Mein Kampf, he who wants to live must fight, and he who does not want to fight in this world, where permanent struggle is the law of life, has no right to exist. The cosmic conspiracy. Jewish Bolshevism. In Hitler's deeply paranoid cosmology, the Jew was elevated to a racial supervillain, the architect of a cosmic conspiracy. He believed that the Jew had created both: capitalism, to enslave nations through global money; communism, Bolshevism, to enslave nations through state control. To Hitler, these were simply two Jewish pincers of a single plot to destroy the Aryan folk. This dangerous simplification, that every communist was a Jew and every Jew a communist, made the utter savagery of the Eastern Front and the Holocaust itself a strategic inevitability. This biological lie required a physical laboratory, Lebensraum, living space. The Nazi doctrine stated that Germany was overcrowded, while the East, Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia, was empty, because the Slavs who lived there were deemed Untermenschen, subhumans. Conquering the East was not about resources, it was about genetic surgery on the map of Europe. The blueprint for this was the General Plan Ost and the accompanying Hunger Plan. The goal was not colonization, but extinction. To push the Slav population out into the deepest parts of Russia, where they would starve. 30 million Soviet civilians were literally earmarked for death by hunger, deliberately deprived of grain to feed the Aryan soldiers and colonists. The rich soil of Ukraine would provide the farms, the remaining population would provide the slaves, and the territory would provide the space into which the racially unfit from Germany could be conveniently pushed. This confirms the truth. Operation Barbarossa was never about territory. It was about genocide. The war in the East was merely the execution phase of Hitler's ideology. The lie was a delusion, but through legislation and state power, it became rigid doctrine. Each subsequent policy was simply the logical application of the preceding lie, that history is biology, and biology must be purged. Hitler's core racial lie, that history is a biological struggle, was systematically codified into German law, escalating from discrimination to industrial genocide. The process began immediately in 1933 with the Law for Restoration of Professional Civil Service, which translated the lie into the policy that Jews equal disloyal, leading to their expulsion from state employment. Simultaneously, the sterilization law targeted the disabled as genetic pollution, resulting in the forced sterilization of 400,000 unfit Germans. The next crucial step was the 1935 Nuremberg Laws, which defined Jewishness by blood, not religion, and formally outlawed intermarriage to preserve Aryan blood purity. By 1939, the state began its murder practice with the T-4 Euthanasia program, classifying 70,000 handicapped Germans as life unworthy of life, and using gas chambers, a direct rehearsal for the final phase. This progression culminated in 1941 with the final solution, the definitive logistical conclusion to Hitler's belief in the racial struggle, resulting in industrial genocide. The T-4 program is particularly chilling. By murdering 70,000 of their own handicapped citizens, the Nazis were essentially conducting a trial run for the gas chambers later used at Auschwitz and Treblinka. Each step was a logical escalation, provided you accepted the first false premise, that humanity is disposable. A lie, no matter how vast, requires an emotional engine to take root in a nation's heart. Germany in the 1920s was a nation humiliated and economically broken. Treaty of Versailles, 1919. Amputated German territory and national pride. Great Depression, 1929. Left 6 million unemployed and desperately looking for an answer. Hitler provided a perfect, simple scapegoat. The November criminals myth, the idea that Germany was stabbed in the back by Jews and Marxists, rather than fairly defeated in World War I. A nation traumatized and humiliated is a nation ready to believe any story that makes it the hero and blames the other. Hitler didn't just rule. He created a secular religion. Torch-lit marches, goose-stepping soldiers, cathedrals of red, black, white banners. The spectacle created a feeling of national power and belonging, with Hitler as the high priest. State-subsidized radio sets meant every apartment became a mini-chapel, broadcasting the gospel of racial supremacy directly into the home. Even children's board games like Juden Raus, Jews Out, normalized prejudice and turned genocide into family fun. The most disturbing realization is that the world partially bought the lie, or at least found it conveniently ignorable. 1936. Berlin Olympics. 49 nations saluted the swastika, lending international legitimacy to the regime. 1938. Munich Agreement. Britain and France essentially rewarded Hitler's racial expansionism by handing over Czechoslovakia. Even the Soviet Union, Hitler's greatest enemy, initially supplied Nazi Germany with grain and oil, believing Hitler's anti-capitalist rhetoric while ignoring the fact that the racial timetable slated Slavs next. The consequences of this ideology still shape the modern world. International law. The Nuremberg trials birthed the concepts of genocide and crimes against humanity, but only after the factories of death had run for 3 years. Ethics. The lie normalized the idea that some human lives are life unworthy of life, a sinister idea that still echoes today in extremist chat rooms and political fringes. Science. Legitimate fields like statistics and anthropology were weaponized to justify murder. The post-war world had to entirely rebuild its ethical foundations in research. Hitler lost the war, but the template of his lie survives. Find a villain, craft a conspiracy, promise purity, celebrate violence. This template endures in fringe podcasts, polished memes, and, at times, mainstream politics. The antidote to Hitler's lie is not merely fact-checking historical events, it is values-checking our fundamental beliefs, that every human possesses dignity regardless of race, religion, ability, or passport. That democracy is fragile when economic despair meets charismatic scapegoating. That science without conscience becomes a scalpel in the hand of the next fanatic. The lie Hitler believed was not unique to him. It is the oldest lie in human history, that we can make the world better by making it less human, until we name it, dissect it, and teach it. If you found this analysis uncompromising and essential, smash the subscribe button. Comment below which of Hitler's early failures, Vienna rejection, WWI defeat, was the true turning point for his ideology.